from the much popular PADI organization. So I slowly move to introduce you the speakers for today evening. So first we have Nishan Perera. Nishan is a Sri Lankan marine biologist and the co-founder of Blue Resources Trust, a marine research and conservation organization based out of Sri Lanka. His current work focuses on understanding the impact of climate change and fisheries on the coral reef and supporting the management of marine protected areas. He has dived extensively around Sri Lanka, exploring remote reefs and wrecks. A co-founder and owner of Island Scuba, he has played a key role in popularizing wreck diving of Colombo. Nishan is also the author of Coral Reefs of Sri Lanka and has contributed articles and images to the Sri Lankan and international travel magazines. Second, we have Mr. Hussain Rasheed, representing the Maldives, regarded as the godfather of the Maldivian diving industry. Mr. Rasheed began diving in 1981 and became a PADI dive master in 1986, an instructor in 1993, and a course director in 2000. He is the former dean of the Faculty of Marine Studies at the Villa College. He is also affiliated as an executive director of all Villa dive centers under his company, Dive Oceans. He is also founding member of the Divers Association of Maldives. Mr. Sendi currently focuses on teaching PADI professionals and has been a mentor to thousands of new divers from across the world, including more than 1,600 divers he has trained in his ongoing career. In 2019, he was the proud recipient of the Scuba Diving Hall of Fame Honorary Award. And then we have Mr. Robert Scammell. Mr. Robert is the regional manager for PADI for India and Sri Lanka. Robert is also PADI course director and instructor examiner. Since 1st March 2018, he has held the position of the regional training consultant, and during that time, he has developed strong relationship with PADI members in the region. Prior to joining PADI, Mr. Rob had more than 10 years of experience in conducting PADI instructor exams and member events within Asia Pacific. Last but not the least, we have Mr. Anis Adenwala. Mr. Anis is the proprietor of the Underwater Film Services and partner at the Orca Dive Club. He has been associated with the sport of scuba diving for the past 24 years, an instructor affiliated with both Confederation Mondiale d'Activités Scubatiques, CMAS, and Professional Association of Diving Instructors PADI federations. Having spent years in diving in various sites around the world, his knowledge and expertise helped many members of the diving community to have fun-filled and safe dives. He has also extended his scuba diving expertise to Bollywood and has helped actors explore their love for underwater sports. So here is our panel for today evening, and we hope to have a wonderful discussion on how this pandemic and its effect on the scuba diving industry across the region. So a warm welcome and good evening to all you gentlemen. Nishan, I'll start off with you first. So diving has come to a standstill everywhere across the globe as we know it. So you yourself being a marine biologist and a diver, how does the dive industry take this news? I mean, how do we soak it all in?
There are both positive impacts in the short term, of course. I think everyone is talking about the environmental positives out of this, with less people kind of having a direct impact on the environment. So in places where diving is quite intense, busy dive sites, you will obviously see potential positive impacts because the physical damage from divers, snorkelers, fins, obviously is going to be much lower. There's going to be a lot less boats, so less pollution in that sense. But of course, you have to put this in context of the major issues for the ocean. As we all know, coral bleaching, climate change is probably the single biggest challenge we have right now. And that's a much bigger issue. And then most reefs, particularly in our region, in India and Sri Lanka in particular, are impacted heavily by illegal or unsustainable fishing. So whether these things change over time is actually what's going to determine whether we actually have a long-term positive impact. Of course, there are short-term impacts in certain areas where diving is pretty intense. There's also kind of another potential negative in some areas where actually having divers can deter other activities, because the presence of divers, tourists, dive operators often is a deterrent to illegal fishing activities. We've seen this for sure in national parks on land, on terrestrial parks in Sri Lanka, where poaching increases when there's less tourism. For all the negatives of tourism, there are also positives of having people and eyes on the ground. So it is also possible that this is happening in the ocean. If I would look at Sri Lanka, but I think particularly in Sri Lanka and India, where the fishing pressure is a bit higher than in the Maldives because of population density, we could have this kind of potential negative of less tourists as well. And again, the other thing is the viability of non-extractive users in terms of tourism or something to local communities is taken away if tourism crashes. So then people are more forced to turn to the ocean directly to feed their families. So because many places there are people who used to be fishermen who've come into tourism, but now if that livelihood is taken away, we can have potential long-term impacts. But yeah, definitely there are some positives where diving is very intense, and just giving it a break, which we normally struggle to do, we have given, a 3, 4, maybe 6-month break from diving. That would be definitely a good thing.
Yeah, thank you, Nishan. Mr. Cindy, you hail from a country which is renowned for its natural underwater beauty and resources. It's a hot spot for diving for many of the divers from across the world. So, can you tell us how the industry in the Maldives has been affected and to what extent?
Well, it's affected, as you know, all the dive centers are closed, and the staff don't know when it's going to happen, when we are going to start. So this is quite sad because recently with the increase of local tourism, the local new dive centers were coming up, and they had a very bright future, and suddenly the whole thing is unsure, and so much investments, young generation have invested a lot of money, and their dream actually came to a halt suddenly. But as Nishan mentioned, it's good for the environment. It's really a break, and the whole ocean needs a break. We are polluting so much fuel, so much gas. Sometimes I feel like this is a phenomenon caused by our destruction, because the Mother Nature, Mother Earth, needs a break, and I feel like this is how the nature recover by itself. Yes, the impact is huge. At the same time, we have a coral bleaching now happening, which is also impacting. But the biggest effect is sad to see the local young guys who started their new operations coming to a halt, and unsure when. But I see this pandemic can be very, very interesting for the Maldives for the future tourism, because it can be a safer destination, Maldives, because, for example, the island which I live currently is local island which is 200, population is 200. So the last 2-3 months, I did not feel that there is a pandemic going on until I went to Male, where I see people with masks and social distancing is possible here. So just because it's very long island, big island with so few people, it's we don't see people so much. So Maldives can be in future a destination where you can feel safe, because we have safari boats. You don't have population, any people, just the crew. We have islands very small with very few population. So, and the local tourism with the islands, where some of the guest houses are very far away from the normal population. So I think when we come back, Maldives will be popular as a safe destination. I can see that. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. Thank you for that insight into the industry out there. Rob, I'm coming to you. We all know that PADI has certified around 27 million divers worldwide, and we can uh, surely assume that most of them won't be diving, now and for at least another few months into the future. So the diving industry, so during this time, we expect, guys who have been, or the divers who have been regularly diving and being active, now they're like, sitting at home or not diving at all. So in this scenario, what would be PADI's, you know, uh, uh, conditions for physical fitness, and we have social distancing norms that we have to apply. So how is PADI geared for the future, like once things become normal and we can dive again? Do you see any drastic changes in the approach?
Right. Well, first of all, obviously PADI's main focus is on safety. It's very early to say how all this is going to unfold into stone as such, but of course, going forward, we'll be looking at things that do, of course, include following World Health Organization guidelines and regulations, encouraging businesses, of course, to follow local laws as well, and regulations and guidelines that are put in place there as well. And of course, all the manufacturers of equipment will be producing their own guidelines, I'd expect, on how to clean equipment, how to maintain it, and how to ensure the safety of divers who are using that equipment. DAN itself has already released some guidelines and advice, and I'm sure they'll build on those as well. Obviously, going forward, our focus, that of dive instructors, members, dive centers, has to be on a strong focus of health and safety and well-being of customers and staff. And of course, these divers who've been in lockdown for a long time, as you mentioned, obviously they'll have to follow the guidelines as laid down by the World Recreational Scuba Training Council when it comes to fitness of diving. We're trying to engage divers as much as possible with blogs, with Facebook posts, Instagram, encouraging them to upskill themselves, use this time to learn more, stay up to date with diving, health and fitness. With this in mind, we have a goal at the moment over the next 50 years to create 1 billion torchbearers of diving. This is 1 billion people like you and I who are interested in underworld to world and forming a more effective, better balance between ourselves and ocean, marine life, and environment as well. So going forward, it's all based on a mindset of health, safety, and taking care of the environment.
Thank you, Rob. So over to you, Mr. Anis. The diving industry was really blooming in mainland India and in the region. Actually, we have seen a lot of dive centers coming up, new dive centers in mainland India, and people were taking to diving in a big way in India, and it was really on the growth path. So now, post COVID, what do you see the scenario? How do you forecast the scenario, and how much do you think? How long would it take for the industry to kind of kickstart and get people back to diving?
Well, we've been diving for a while now, and me being in Mumbai city and a dive center based here, with the lockdown and with this COVID, it is just put a standstill. And before COVID, the dive industry, we were just making the people aware. So the awareness was growing a lot, and yes, the sport was in its nascent stages, and it's grown really well, and a lot of people have taken up to it, and a lot of people are discussing the sport and sharing their stories. And now suddenly with this halt, everybody is sharing their old posts together, and they're pulling out all their archives and the footage what they've shot, including me, and letting our guests and friends just be in touch with us regarding the sport, because this is a space where we all love to be in. So keeping everybody connected is our motto. And um, as Sandy sir rightly put it, the earth is healing, and I guess we should just give it its space to heal. So whenever we are back, it's not going to be a huge explosion, but yes, people will get back to it slowly and steadily, because we do a lot of outbound tours and taking on the courses in the city itself. It's training programs. So until the pools don't open and the gyms don't open, and things are not smoother in the city and the country and the world, I don't think we're going to go too much ahead. But in the meantime, I guess the earth is, looking after itself, and the reefs are getting restored. We were talking to some people from Palau, and they've seen so many fish, which they've tripled in numbers, which is fantastic. And I guess it's a positive sign. So giving it a break is going to really help everybody in this world.
Right. Nishan, Sri Lanka is a beautiful island with a lot of natural resources and pretty much beautiful beaches, very world popular beaches, but yet we see a very little bit of diving activity around the island, but because post COVID also, Scuba, since it's more of a sport where it's a small group of people at a given point of time engaging in it. Do you think Scuba would be a choice of activity when you come post COVID, because it's quite manageable because we do it in small groups? And does that mean Sri Lanka can look at opening up more dive centers in the region, in the island?
I think historically, like I think all of South Asia, we have this situation. Historically, locals themselves were probably not as necessarily connected to the ocean underwater environment. We were a fishing culture and all of that, but we were not necessarily divers. So it's not always been a historical thing. I think Maldives took the lead because tourism was such a big part of the economy. And of course, let's be honest, they probably have the best diving in our region, which helps a lot to build kind of a dive industry. So it's grown. Sri Lanka is a challenge. There is tremendous potential, of course. I think, in my opinion, it's been held back of course, we had historically tourism had issues because of civil conflict in Sri Lanka. But in the last 10 years, as tourism develops, one of the challenges has been to really identify Sri Lanka's niche within diving, because diving itself is fairly vast. I mean, people have different interests, and each destination has an identity. Maldives is very well known for pelagics or big fish action. It's not necessarily the best coral reefs. Then you would go to Indonesia. You have Truck Lagoon for wreck diving, someplace for sharks or manta rays, that's Maldives. So it's very important to identify, if you want to be a dive destination for tourists, you need to have an identity. I firmly believe that wreck diving is something that Sri Lanka can build an identity around. That's something that I've kind of pushed personally along with some of my work. That, and then linking the dive industry with overall government tourist initiatives, because again, our tourist industry has looked at diving as an add-on activity. So tourists are here, they do a 2-week tour, and maybe they do 1 or 2 days of diving because they happen to be at the beach. But kind of bringing a destination, an identity, and making diving kind of a key component of someone's travel is important. So that's a marketing aspect, as then there's potential to develop a training center, because you don't necessarily even have to have the best diving. If you look at Thailand, a place like Pattaya has a huge diving industry. It's not the best diving in Thailand, but they've built a tech diving and recreational diving training industry. So you have to build an identity. I think then there is tremendous potential. We've definitely seen a growth in tourism for diving, and actually India and Sri Lanka has seen a lot of movement, a lot of Indian divers coming to Sri Lanka because of connectivity as well. So this kind of opportunity is there, but it's important that the dive industry also comes together stronger. And when I say dive industry, not just the dive shops and the training centers, but the entire industry as a whole, the hotel sector, the travel agents begin to understand what we can sell and how to sell that product, and then also put together measures to improve some of the logistics and the infrastructure for diving in terms of better boats and docking facilities. But all of that comes with realizing what you want to do and identifying your niche within the market. That's really important, I think. If you do that, yeah, there is potential to grow the industry.
Thank you, Nishan. Mr. Sendi, we understand, like, I've watched many, posts of yours on Facebook and stuff like that. And we understood there's a reason, there is actually a case of issue of chloride bleaching across the Maldives. And given this current condition where, like you said, Earth has actually taken a, breather, and the oceans are also given that chance to break away from the constant pounding by human activity. What do you think this duration would help, bring about some visible change in the whole issue? And going forward, is it, going to help the better and healthier corals as we go along?
Yeah, coral bleaching, it's happening. It was predicted in June, actually. It's not only just Maldives, it's worldwide. But today, there is no diving activity going on. So I don't see, we don't see the records, but it is happening around the world, not just Maldives. And it was predicted. Now, the first coral bleaching I saw was in '88. There was a coral bleaching where you can obviously see that there is something happening. Then the second bleaching which I saw was '98 coral bleaching. That these are all worldwide major coral bleaching. '98, and then the 2010 coral bleaching. But now it's recently it was not every 10 years. Now 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020, it's happening. So there is something wrong, and it's more rapid coral bleaching. So the Earth is recovering. It takes 10 years to recover. I was a diver in '86. So I saw the full recovery. Every 10 years, it takes 10 years to fully recover, and even a better reef, from the coral bleaching. But now there is no break. It's happening too often, too frequent. And I don't know, it's not good. It doesn't look good. We need to do more research. Now, coming back to what Nishan just spoke, you don't diving, recreational divers just find Indian Ocean. We have a panel who belong to the Indian Ocean. The ocean is full of resources. We have to go more into education. We have to work together with universities and colleges and learn about the resources. For example, we have engineering, we have biomimicry, we have seaweeds, we have seagrass. We have a lot of resources where we need, the diving community need to work together with universities and college to learn more. We need to produce more. We need to educate more people who love the ocean. There is enough resources for anybody in the industry. If you want to be a doctor, you can, a nurse or medicine is there. Engineering is there in the ocean. So we should all come together and look, brainstorm and look into which universities can come together and work together. I think this is, we need more scientists, we need more research on what's happening, and it is bad. It doesn't look good, bleaching. But fortunately, there are resilient corals coming. So I think the Earth is recovering by itself in another form. So there are corals which are resilient for the last 2-3 coral bleachs. But like I said, we need more scientists, and we need to work together with more universities, and the future will be there. I don't give up hope.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Mr. Rob, carrying, just connecting back to what you said earlier, and how the diving industry should come together and work, forward post COVID. So, what is the outreach program of the PADI, and how does it reach out to the 27 million odd PADI certified divers across the world?
We're reaching out to all our divers with social we're reaching out to them with Facebook, Instagram, email campaigns. We're in the process of launching an adventures app, which will guide divers in a local market towards a dive center, and also for divers who are travelers who kind of turn up in a destination, haven't booked a trip. It kind of guides them towards a dive center and activities they can take place. But now has never been a better time to learn. There's so many chances online for divers to engage, educate themselves more and more and more. There are webinars happening on, I think from ourselves, we're doing 2 a week at the moment. And we're trying to engage dive instructors, dive centers, and of course for them as well to engage their students and customers to keep on diving, to keep on learning, and to keep themselves engaged. And Nis, as he mentioned, if you look now on Facebook, you'll see all these posts of videos, of memories, of pictures, and a great positive feel about diving and the way that diving will bounce back from this. And it will bounce back.
Thank you, Rob. Mr. Anis, let's say you've been the choice of Bollywood. Like, I can call you a celebrity diving instructor. And, with your kind of experience handling such celebrities and being instrumental in bringing a lot of celebrities into diving, and also, the underwater scenes in our movies that we got to see recently, which have, put diving on a, kind of radar for most of the adventure seekers in the country. So, what is the biggest worry we are facing in that regard, like, from where we were?
But coming back to the industry, it's all specific to the script. But to achieve that script and the scenario, we have to train the actors. So training the actors means going back in the pool and doing the basic understanding of equipment, breathing underwater, and then we alter the session for them and keep it to the script specific so that they know what they need to do. So that's where the film industry is concerned. And yes, the film is shot, the sets are created, everything is underwater, camera unit, safety divers, all actors looked after, and this basically excites them because some who have already been certified earlier, it's very easy for them to be part of the unit and have fun in the water. But for people who are training for the first time, they really enjoy it, and it's a new medium for them, and it's maybe the first time they're doing it. And I've worked with quite a few of the young actors and a few elderly actors in our industry, and for them it was quite a great space to be. Like one of my students, she's an actor, but she's now all the way up to an advanced level diver, and is like looking forward to go diving. If a shoot comes by and she's in it with the script of an underwater, we'll execute that project. But right at this point of time, they're all, as I said earlier, they're just all going back into their old photographs and their trips that they've taken to different destinations worldwide, and talk about it, and they just come back in a moment like, when is all this going to change? I said, just have patience, it'll all turn around, it'll take its own time, but I guess we just need to hang in there and be positive about the whole thing. And I guess I've attended so many PADI webinars just to be in touch and connect with everybody else and so on and so forth. So that's going on along with whatever we're doing on an everyday basis, but just keeping everybody engaged and trying to keep them on the computer but submerged. That's how we're looking at it.
Nishan, see, we all know there are like a lot of hotspots for feeding fish in the oceans, and especially with tourism and the diving industry also wanting to grow, resorts pumping food waste into the oceans, so that all this was happening and this thing. So now with everybody taking a break and not functioning to that effect, what do you think the changes are there on the ecosystem, marine ecosystem around your part of the world?
Well, the changes are, I think, what we were discussing earlier in terms of the short-term impacts of us and what we want to look at for the future. Like I said, coral bleaching probably, as we've all discussed, single biggest thing. I mean, fish feeding itself, sometimes controversial. There's two arguments to this, and as someone who works in research and a scientist, I can't give you a very black and white answer, because what I'll tell you with a lot of these environmental issues is there's so many variables you have to consider that you can't, until you consider all of them, you can't give a clear answer. So fish feeding obviously is not ideal, for sure. With anything that we are altering a natural cycle is not ideal for sure. However, you have to put this in context with where we are, because we have to realize that we have altered the natural environment significantly in many, many ways. The fact that we have a dive industry is altering it through emissions, through boats, through divers and divers are altering fish behavior. So we are in that situation. So if it's done well, any activity that is tourism related can be positive. There are great success stories. Fiji's shark feeding dives are fantastic stories where they've set up marine protected areas, and actually the shark numbers and also the other fish numbers have increased in areas that were heavily overfished, and the locals don't fish that anymore. So it's not an ideal solution, but you're not going to have a solution where people just stop fishing, because that is an industry and people also have to eat, people have to feed their families. So it's not ideal, but these can be done successfully. But it depends on how you conduct the feeding, the safety of the divers, how much you're altering the fish behavior, and also what you're feeding them. Just generally just going and dumping anything in the ocean, dumping trash or bread is not a very good thing, I will tell you, as thing to feed fish. So if you're feeding them something that is more part of their natural diet, if you're doing it in a way that has minimal impacts. Now, for an example, in Fiji, they only feed certain amount on certain days. So they don't completely make those sharks dependent on the handouts. The sharks are actually free feeding on other days, and it's very disciplined. No dive boat will go to that dive site and do a fish feed on a day that they're not supposed to. There's a very strict limit on how many divers. So then it can be a very good story. But if you have a situation where, you have, 10, 15 boats and everyone's just putting fish and bread and hotel waste and everything and creating, you can have a situation that's bad for the environment. And also you can also have a potential safety accident with fish, especially if you're dealing with divers and apex predators like some of the big sharks. So that's where the controversy comes from. But yes, it can have positive impacts. But again, all these variables have to be considered when you do that. But you do have to think that while we do an alteration of the natural environment, we are doing it in an ocean that is not pristine or natural. If we want to look at not interfering at all, then we have to pull back every activity that we engage with the ocean. And that's not feasible as well. So you have to consider all of this.
Thank you, Nishan. And we could say that you've been through a lot of, you've seen a lot in your life, right, during your diving career as well. So now to put it in perspective, like you have survived the tsunami, the aftermath of that, and probably even the Great Recession as well, economic crisis that we all went through, and now you are right there in the middle of this pandemic that struck the world like never before. So have you seen more gloomier days than this, or do you think you've seen something worse?
Well, I've seen more bad, worse scenarios. For example, going back to the environmental issues, when I started in the early 80s, we could see like a hammerhead shark in Rasdu, Madivaru. I think some of you must have been diving there. But I've seen 70 to 80 hammerheads over there, right next to Male during the 80s, the Tidafushis have been seeing like 60, 70 gray reef sharks, and then suddenly during the 90s, late 90s, they were gone, There was no gray sharks, there was no hammerheads in the Maldives by very few divers. And the Maldives actually protected all the shark species during 2010, and now today we see sharks again back. So these are very, emotional when I was taking pictures of 30 Maldives, And now you see, for example, during the early 80s, and I had to go to all the way 1.5 days to Mimu Atoll with scuba tank. Today, I can jump anywhere in Maldives and take a picture of turtle. So there are very emotional, sad, but today it's very positive. So I don't see, I always see there will be a future. The future will be bright because in the early 80s, we were only 4 divers in the Maldives who were talking about the environment. But today we are on social media, we are on Twitter, we can say what we want. So this is very positive. On those days, you just have to go and see and meet someone. And also in the Maldives, the political situation was very unstable during the last 10 years, I would say. When you have a politically unstable country, it's also very bad for the environment. The destruction is worse. So it's, I put myself on Twitter as an environmental jihadist. You need to be a jihad. You know how many people in Philippines, they die of protecting, I don't know, a rhino in Africa. They die. Rangers are dying. So we need a bit more activism, We need to create a group, not a group. I think Indian Ocean, we need like Suraj Khan and maybe Anis, and we belong to Indian Ocean. We need to have, the problem actually is, the owner of Fisheries Ministry and the owner of Tourism Ministry, the owner of Environment, they are working separately. But we need to get all of them to work together. So to get them work together, we need like they have been CMAS, is like a confederation where the ocean belongs to one confederation, but anything or research or anything which happens will go through this confederation. So maybe we can have a confederation, Indian Ocean Marine, I don't know, think of something like that. But we need to work very much, you know, it's hard, it's tough. We are reclaiming lagoons in a rapid pace. And these are the nursery ground for, I believe Maldives is the nursery ground of the entire Indian Ocean, because we have shallow lagoons where the breeding starts from many marine species. I don't know, later when we meet or we can look for how we can work to manage all the entities to get together. But there is a problem, serious problem, where business tycoons are looking for creating a destructive for the development of tourism. Tourism is also damaging a lot our country.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. Rob, like, let's be honest here. I mean, like, we are really clueless as to what is in store for us, I know, under the given circumstances. So, would you want to take a shot at predicting the future, like, of diving as we come out of this?
Get my crystal ball out, right? I kind of feel many people in the world are locked up at the moment. There's going to be this great big resurgence, this kind of, I want to get out of the house. Some of the big posts that go around at the moment is kind of, what are you going to do at the end lockdown? Those divers are going to want to go back, see the favorite dive site, see how it's changed. The world is breathing now. It's taken a breath, it's repairing itself. And those dive sites are going to be awesome. They're going to be absolutely fantastic. Diving as a business really has gone through a hell of a lot of things. It's gone through volcanoes, it's gone through earthquakes, tsunamis, and the dive industry itself has grit, and it will bounce back. It will bounce back again and again. And diving is such a fantastic thing, and it's such a unique thing that people who have been locked up for so long now are just going to go, I just want to go, I can chill out, I can see those wonderful fish and sharks, the great reefs, and just enjoy myself, relax, and switch off from all this craziness that has gone on in the world the last month. We're doing our best to try and drive this. PADI has 87% of the global voice in online posts in diving, right? And pushing that kind of forward with our Adventures app, we'll kind of see that probably the domestic markets will be the first ones to boom because, of course, of the restrictions on travel. Domestic markets first will start to come back and grow. And then, of course, people will want to go to their favorite places. They'll want to go back to Maldives. They want to go to Sri Lanka, Andamans as well. They're going to want to see how things have changed and has that environment improved, right? And we're there to help drive it, promote people. And I really think there will be this great big bounce back. Oh, not great big, but this bounce back where people just want to go out, enjoy themselves, have a great adventure. As long as we keep the focus that we're keeping divers safe and healthy, and the safety and the health and the wellness of our divers and our staff is key to the forefront of this as well.
Yeah, I would just like to throw one more question at you, like from the perspective of equipment and health and safety. What do you think there will be any change in the way we use those equipment, or because under the conditions that we have, and since we know we are in for a long haul and there's no short-term solution to what we are facing today.
Certainly, I would say initially people will be looking at how equipment is cleaned, how it's washed, how it's cleaned down, and there's various guidelines, recommendations in place at the moment. I'm sure the manufacturers of equipment will look at those accordingly. I also think perhaps things, for example, if a dive center promotes on health and safety with divers, perhaps giving divers their own mouthpieces, for example. But from what I've heard as well, already from a lot of dive shop owners I talk to, that they're having a lot of inquiries where people now are moving towards and asking again and again more about owning their own equipment. So people are thinking of the safety and thinking, hang on, I do want my own mask and fins, my own rec set. Purely from health and safety point of view, they know it's theirs, and we all know as divers that equipment is personal.
Thank you. Anis, as we have a lot of talk in India regarding the impact of what the tourist industry in India as a whole has gone through, and with a lot of organizations and associations looking to the government for relief measures and working out bailout packages for the industry, because the industry as a whole employs one of the largest number of human resources across the country in terms of an industry. So, do you think the dive industry also should benefit from some kind of a relief like this? And if it is, if you think yes, what do you think are the measures that we should be asking for governments and organizations in this regard?
Well, for starters, I think the government has put in place a stimulus package. But in the tourism industry, we all fall into that bracket because we're all looking at outbound tours and education of diving and so on and so forth. So it may be a bit too early because there's a bigger problem of the people stranded, need to get home, and there's too much more going on where the tourism is concerned. For the packages to come in, but we rather, divert all the funds to the people who really need it as of now. The guys who are traveling, the guys who are stranded, the guys who need to get back to their houses, they've been just away from home for months, and they're a little totally off balance right now. So, as Rob put it, the domestic market is the market that is going to open up. But for us to approach a forum or the travel body saying that we're also a dive industry, we're also part of the system, and everything is on a halt right now. So we surely are going to push that through with a few dive centers together, just as a unit, to just know what's going on. Because I would appreciate if the taxations that we pay a lot of money to the government, all that is delayed and forfeited, or moratoriums are given, so that we can at least stand up and get on with other things that are needed. Because some staff, the dive instructors, they're all working on their salaries, and now they're off-season salaries and so on and so forth. So right now everything is on a halt. So people will have to understand how much can they shell out, and how many staff they need, and how do they want to go about it. But as we need to get on with it, yes, it is going to open up slowly, but we just hope and pray that this stimulus package can go through, and it can help the people who really need it. That's what I would suggest.
Thank you, Anis. We just have about a bit more time, to be around, and then all your answers were like very quick and brief, to the point. So, I would like to throw that question what I threw at Rob regarding the rest, the three of you can go a shot at predicting what the immediate future for diving is like. So you, Anis, you can just talk in a perspective from India, and Nishan from Sri Lanka, and Cindy from Maldives. So just to we get an idea of, because each market is different and might have its own unique challenges.
Go, Nishan. Oh, me? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a huge coastline. We have a massive coastline, and there is so many dive centers around the coastline. So for us, that is the first move, to do domestic travel, and we have the Lakshadweep and the Andamans, which is top class diving. So again, it's to do with travel. My concern would be going to, say, diving in Pondicherry, to a Goa, to a Rameshwaram, to a Netrani, to Kovalam, and then you have the Lakshadweep and the Andaman, which are really far away from mainland India, but they've got some stunning diving. So I guess that would be our agenda initially, to focus on, to get people to do domestic diving, including completion of courses and seeing some other stuff, because if you compare the Maldives and the Lakshadweep, they're very similar. And if you compare the Andamans to Phuket and Thailand, it's very similar. So there is that kind of balance that we have. But again, accessibility is something that we need to look into, and obviously the whole travel plan of people traveling, getting to different destinations.
Nishan, would you like to take up from that?
Yeah, I think I totally agree. Once this immediate situation changes and things start opening up a little bit, I think the domestic market would definitely be significant. I think, of course, India probably has the biggest domestic market. But even in a country like Sri Lanka, where the industry itself is smaller, there is definitely potential to work more with the domestic market. Our dive center based out of Colombo actually already has an existing local clientele and doing more inbound travel within the country. Sri Lanka has, places that are less explored. So putting kind of expedition trips together would be something kind of that a lot of dive centers are looking, not just us in the short term. But I think eventually, to be very honest, as Rob pointed out, things will bounce back. It will take a bit of time, and it's hard to predict exactly when, but the world will get back. I mean, the world has got through bigger calamities than this, through wars and tsunamis and everything. So we'll move on. We might have a little bit more precautions with how we manage our equipment and hygiene and safety. One of the good things for dive shops and the retail industry might be actually, as Rob pointed out, a growth in the domestic retail market for dive equipment. So that may be something that dive shops try to invest in a little bit more, put more effort into, and kind of diversifying their range, not just in the dive trips, but local training, kind of value addition, building more of a diving community, continuing education, retaining customers and doing stuff. So you can see that in our region, mostly in India already, but I think even in Sri Lanka and Maldives, you'll probably see that. And the international market will eventually pick up, as Rob said, and then we'll slowly get back to what it used to be.
Good. Cindy, your thoughts on this?
Yes, I think I heard the tourism minister have been announcing that on an interview that they are thinking of ways to how we can start up the tourism operation back to operation. And I see really potential. Maldives can be one destination where you can have you start your travel with safe destination travel. For example, a good example is riverboat. You don't interact with the local community. You interact only with the crew. So with very strict, very strict, with testing, with people who travel with a special license, when they arrive, proper testing, and then on the airport, or even they arrive on the vessel, proper testing. And I think the first industry which can start will be the riverboats, which is completely diving industry. And our resorts, we have resorts with very few beds, 50 beds, 30 beds. These resorts can be open for private jets. So Maldives, I can see a future to start really traveling to this destination as the first. I think we can be the first because of one island, one resort concept, which is living. It's like different cities in India, but we have to cross the ocean to travel and then reach the island. So I see that potential very soon happening.
There we go. You've heard it all from these wonderful people who've been out there, done it all in the industry, and still doing and looking forward to make that splash as soon as things are back to normal. So thank you for all of you for being part of this talk, and thank you for the audience who tuned in. So hopefully their insights into the industry and for the future is helpful. And Anis, Nishan, Rob, and Hussain, thank you for being
Thank you.
a part of this show. Look forward to meeting you all real soon, hopefully. Okay. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.